then the webcomic thing was just like, I don't know. I wasn't really feeling it. I really wanted to do something else. And at the time, I was working at a toy company, and I had a animated series that was going into production. And of course, literally the week I had just approved all the scripts, and of course, literally that day we kind of went out of business because one of our distributors ended up owing us some money and kind of destroyed my budget. So I had no job, and I didn't know. I was kind of like trying to figure out what to do. And as I was looking for a job, I was like, all right, well, I'll just make comics. I'll just work on comics. And I was like, I'll do Monster Matador, but my art wasn't. This was about, let me see, 2011. So this is really just at the beginning of Kickstarter, maybe, but it wasn't yet like a thing, and still finding artists. I was taking Jim Higgins ran a course at Meltdown Comics, where a lot of us came out of. A lot of us met a lot of local creators around here that we can talk about. Were in those classes. And I started doing a comic strip called Unemployant. I wanted to do Matador, but I'm like, I'm not ready yet. I really wanted to do it. Like, I had done these kind of things but I knew when I did it next, I wanted to do it right. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And so I did Unemployant, but I'm like, I did Unemployant, and I kind of, because I was unemployed, I really kind of, I made myself kind of like do the work in a way, because I was doing the art, and I was doing 20 strips a week. I did 20 full, comic strips, 3-4 panel comic strips a week. And I did that I think I did 180 of them. So whatever that is, I did it in like 3 months, which is crazy, And then I still didn't feel like I was ready for Monster Matador. And I did, don't ask me why, I did a 200-page science fiction graphic novel, which is insane when you think about it. But why not?
Yeah.
But I was doing it like I wasn't doing it like to show any, you know what I mean? It was more just like this exercise, which is insane when you think about it. But I was doing like a page a day, just to kind of like get those muscles really, whatever. And around that time, Comixology Submit came out.
Mm-hmm.
And people are like, you should just throw it on there. I'm like, yeah. And so I just threw it on there. And there was one guy who found it, and he started reviewing it. And he liked the story. I mean, the writing got good reviews. The art was, which I knew I wasn't under any impression that anyone was going to be blown away by the art. But it was nice just getting that, getting those reviews for the story, people liking the story and whatnot.
And what's the name of that graphic novel?
The Third.
The Third. Okay.
The Third, yeah. And then I was done with that, and I was like, all right, well, let me do Monster Matador, and around that time, my wife and I decided to start having children. And so I was like, I don't really want to start anything like with an artist and do all this until we get kind of, because it was just, I knew I just wasn't going to be able to. So I'm like, well, in the meantime, I was like, in the meantime, I was like, okay, I was going to start working out the story in the world. And again, because I'm something wrong with me, I'm like, oh, you know what? I'll just draw it. I'll work it out by drawing it. Right. So if you look at those, and this is now the comic book. Okay. I wound up doing 12 issues, but so this comic book, if you look at like especially the first 4 issues, they're kind of on a 6-panel grid. Mm-hmm. And the storytelling is very, very simple. What happened was I did that science fiction, which was very complex. And I just like, it kind of like reached way beyond my ability, So I thought, let me just kind of take it slow here. And I'm not really, I wasn't intending to do 12 issues. but it was just, okay, let me just work out the story drawing in this really simple. So I started, so those first are very simplistic, but that begins, that's like, you could call it, canon in a way.
Okay.
So that's really where Monster Matador, like the modern version or the current version, begins. And uh, I I did I was doing those again. I was drawing a page a day, and again, I just started putting them on Comixology just for fun, but people liked them, and I had done five issues, five issues, I think. And then my wife gave birth a lot earlier than we had thought. We had some complications and all this stuff. And basically, it was about almost I had released issue 5, and all this stuff happened. And it was basically, I stopped drawing, I stopped writing. It was almost 2 years that I did anything. I think I had done a little bit of issue 6, but the original plan was to do just like a little bit of this one and then get an artist and then, you know, um, do what I'm doing now. But life kind of got in the way. So, but, life, right? And so I was pretty much like done. I was out of it. I was not, like, my head was not in it. I just, you know what I mean? Like Monster, everything was just kind of done and dead. And then out of the blue, this is like, so prior to that, so my son was they were born on Christmas of all days. Prior to that, I was in a class with Ryland Grant at Meltdown Comics. I was in a class with Ryland Grant, who's a writer, Banjacks, Suicide Jockeys, Ringo Award winner, Carla Nappi, who does Duplicate, Tony Fabro, who does 3-Panel Crimes, a couple other people. We're all in this class together. And basically all that happened, and I literally, I lost touch with everyone and whatnot. And out of the blue, almost 2 years later, Ryland emailed me and he's like, "Hey, I'm doing a panel at Long Beach Comic-Con about, it's for independent artists and whatever. And I thought of you because, you do Monster Matador." He's like, "I love it." And, and I was like, and I remember getting that email and hitting reply and writing an email and just being like, "Yeah, I'm not really doing anything and I haven't done anything in 2 years, but, thanks." And I stopped myself from sending it. And I thought about it, and then I said, "You know what? Like, I'll do it." But I'm like, if I do it, I need to kind of like, I need to get back to doing comics. I'm like, I don't want to show up at a panel and be like, "Yeah, I haven't done anything in 2 years.
Yeah.
Why am I here?" You know what I mean? And, but I wasn't like, I still, like, mentally, I couldn't, like, couldn't write or anything, but I had a pitch. I had a script laying around called Intergalactic, about, it's like a sci-fi futuristic science fiction, kind of like an orthodox Sherlock Holmes who solves cases in this future world. And I had a script. I had a script for like a number 1 issue. And so I wound up just kind of getting back into it and drawing that. So when I did the panel, I was like, "Oh yeah, I'm working on this book, Intergalactic," right? And then, but through that, I reconnected with Ryland and Carla and everybody. And Ryland and Carla were kind enough to invite me into a little group between the two of them and me now, reading each other's scripts and things like that. And Ryland was a really, really big fan of Monster Matador, which was really encouraging. At first I thought he was kidding, but he really dug the book, and he was like, "You got to do more." And so, they had sent me their scripts. Ryland had sent me, I think it was Banjacks, and Carla had just started Duplicate. And if you read those books, you know how good they are. And I remember reading those scripts and being like, I need to step up my game. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like because I was doing these really simple scripts for Matador. I wasn't like trying to like do anything like, because it was for me to draw, and it just really it started pushing me to do, you know, so if you look at the back half of Monster Matador, probably from 6 to 12, the scripts become more complex, they're not as like A to B, which the first ones were basically like Monster, this happens, that happens, whatever. It still keeps with the tone of those original ones, but they get to be a little more complex. And I wasn't ready to write like a real script, you know what I mean, for an artist yet, because I was still kind of like, now I had to kind of get back into that mental space and into the groove and whatnot. And so so I wound up sort of just figuring out, okay, how can I close this off, right? And I figured, so at issue 12, it sort of brings the whole story full circle, ties everything up into a nice bow, and kind of leaves the Matador in a place where he's ready to start his next journey, right? It's like the perfect, it's like season 1 and then season 2. And so that's when I started looking for artists, and then I started writing Tango of the Matadors. And Tango was meant to be, and it is, a soft relaunch, a soft reboot of Monster Matador. So you can start Tango. You can start from Tango, and it's like a number 1 issue. You don't have to know anything that came before.
Mm-hmm.
In that those first 2 pages basically lays out the entire thing, right? But if you've read those first 12 issues, it leads right into Tango. You know what I mean? It's fine. So the original plan for that. So Fabio was not the original artist I had in mind for Tango. That was Sergio Rios. And Sergio Rios is a Mexican artist. He does a book called Rockers. He's got a lot of books going, independent books that he does himself. And he had done a couple of covers for me for Monster Matador when I was doing it. He did covers, I think it was 8 and 9, or 9 and 10. Sergio's style is more cartoony.
Mm-hmm.
And it was his leagues beyond me, but it was close enough to my art that the plan was to go back at some point and just kind of like, because I think from issues 7 to 12 I only penciled, so I was going to go back and have those inked, and then it would be like kind of like one straight line, you know what I mean? Like, it wouldn't be as jarring a thing. But Sergio, by the time I was ready, had started working on his own book, so he couldn't do it. So then I set out to find another artist, and this was 2019, maybe 2018, 2019. And I remember this was around Halloween. It must have been, Halloween of 2019, I think. And Ryland had organized a big signing at Golden Apple Comics for a bunch of indie creators. And a couple of days before, I remember I was talking to Ryland, and I was mentioning how Sergio couldn't do it. This other artist fell through. I'm like, I can't really find anyone, and it was important for me to have a Latino artist, for the book. And I was having a lot of, I was looking on online for artists. I just couldn't find, what I was looking for. And Fabio had just finished Banjax at the time. And Ryland's like, well, Fabio just finished. He's looking for work. Do you want me to ask him? And I was like, I don't know. I love Fabio's art. I think what he did on Banjax was amazing. If you read Ryland's scripts, they're incredibly dense. And as an artist, you really need to be able, skill to really pull them off, to get all the information that he wants in there. But stylistically, Fabio wasn't really what I had in mind, because I was still like, the stuff I did was still kind of like humor, like
Mm-hmm.
very tongue in cheek, I guess you can say. And I hadn't written Tango really with an artist like Fabio in mind. And then I remember talking to I was thinking about it, and I remember talking to Ryland, and I think I was just and I was just like, you know what, let me talk to Fabio. Uh, let me see what he does. We'll do a page or two, and maybe I'll kind of think about it. And so he put me in touch. I talked to Fabio, and Fabio was really excited about the script, um, and he sent back these layouts, and uh, it was um, I want to say it's the second or third page in the book. It's the first. It's like this strip. It's just the Matador's eyes, and then like you pull back, and I was just blown away because it was like if the Matador was a real person, that was what I saw in my head. And then he sent the inked page of that, and it was just like, it's like this like light bulb or whatever. Like, Fabio is the artist for this book.
Mm-hmm.
And it was just and it was funny. I didn't change the script at all to fit him because I thought it brings out the humor in a different way because it his style is so serious sometimes, so it's fun. Like we changed, like he brought some, he would do some things in the script, and we just kind of our collaboration like gelled over the course of it. But it was a really fun script to do. It was a really fun story to do because it wasn't what I had intended, but at the same time, it was what I wanted. And Alex, who's our colorist, I have to mention. Alex, I found again. I was looking for someone, and Alex, I found on Instagram. She's a Mexican. She lives in Mexico City, a colorist, and I was looking for a colorist. And the problem with Fabio's work is that it's kind of I don't know if chiaroscuro is really the right term, but he leaves a lot for your mind to fill in. You know what I mean? Like everything is there, but it's not like he doesn't define every angle. But if you look at it, your mind will fill that in, right? But for a colorist, it's tricky because as a colorist, you need to understand and you need to know where those angles are. You need to know structure and things like that. So I came across Alex, and there's something about her work. Her color palette was really interesting. It was kind of bright, but the way it all came together, it like fit together, And then I started looking through her Instagram. She had some things that she sculpted. She sculpted, I don't know if they were heads or something like that. And I thought, okay, so she understand. If she's a sculptor, then she's going to understand. She's going to know what to do. With Fabio's colors, with Fabio's drawings. And I had her do. She did some test pages, and it came out great. And you can see in Tango, you could see along, as that, and as an editor, I'm pretty hands off. I kind of have the philosophy of like, unless it's like wrong, or something egregious, I kind of like nudge the artists. I don't really like force change on them, um, and and you can see kind of Alex and Fabio. You can see them kind of like over the course of the series, feeling each other out, and Alex getting more and more comfortable. And at some point, they just click, and it's just fantastic. You know what I mean?
Thanks for watching. Please hit the subscribe button to make sure you don't miss out on any Fanboy Planet video content. And visit fanboyplanet.com for other features, reviews, interviews, previews, and of course, listening to the Fanboy Planet podcast. And remember, use your powers for good.